Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Legion Alpha, and we're going to start with our class analysis. Yes, we are. Now, how is this going to work? Because if you've been following the Alpha in any way, you'll know that Blizzard is making huge changes on a weekly basis. A lot of band-aid fixes to problems and stems from ideas that they had an original vision for a class and spec. It's been met badly in a lot of cases. The reason is they seem to have a design philosophy right now, which was going into Legion, they said, look, we're going to make the encounters more difficult, but in order to counter that, we're going to make the classes far easier to play and lower the actual skill ceiling required to get the best potential DPS or tanking or healing output of your class so that you can focus more on the encounters without making too many mistakes with the specs. Needless to say, there are a vast majority of the guys with Alpha that are raiders who enjoy the fact that there is a way of pushing your spec a little bit further and having greater interest, and it has been met badly. Blizzard seems to have recognized that, yeah, maybe we went a little bit overboard. We're a little bit overboard with a lot of things, and we can tone that back down. So they're changing hell of a lots of stuff, and it's likely to continue to change throughout the alpha. That has meant I've made around 19 to 20 class videos and not uploaded them because I'm like, this is going to be out of date, this is going to suck. But we can't ignore it. So how are we going to satiate that? I'm going to do a huge video on each of the specs. They are not likely to change dramatically at this point in terms of what they're going to do. If that does happen, I will of course revisit them as a priority, but generally what I'm going to do is a huge video looking at how the spec has changed, likely changes that are going to be made, how I generally personally feel about it, and then I'll revisit it later towards the end of Legion's cycle. But because we have like 40 specs to get through, this is really the best system I can come up with, is to do a huge overview. This is what's going on with it. This is likely how this is going to play out in the future. This is how I feel about it. And then if we need to, we'll come back to it later. So we will do some sort of, if some of them might only need a quick look towards the end of the Legion Alpha, whatever it might be, but we'll get there when we get there, alright guys? So that's how this is going to work. So without further ado, this is going to be lengthy. I recommend you put your feet up, get your stuff ready. And here we go. I'm going to start with the Affliction Warlock. Why? The Affliction Warlock has been so unchanged since its inception into Legion that a lot of people seem to have felt it has been ignored. I don't believe that's the case. I actually think they're pretty close to what they want the Affliction Warlock to be. And I've got to say, this has been one of my most favoured specs in the Legion Alpha. Now, you might be saying, you're full of shit, you're level 104. This is my third Affliction Warlock. I've been playing a hell of a lot on the level 110 realm, which has recently been disabled for PvE purposes. But generally speaking, that is how it's going to be. Alright guys, so this is how we're going to do. How does it work? At the very base of this, we start with just 3 dots, really. We start with Agony, and we start with Corruption, and we start with Reap Soul. Reap Soul is your artifact ability. Now, they have released a blog post saying, look, these are the changes that are coming that didn't make it into this build. One of them is the removal of Reap Soul, and with good reason. Reap Soul is super fucking boring. It's a 45-second cooldown dot. It has some fancy tooltip stuff, like each time Reap Soul deals damage, it increases in frequency. Who gives a shit? I can't do anything with that. It's just the way the dot works. It's not fun, and that should always be, in my mind, when they design the talents, and this is going to be prevalent later on, we talk about some things, is that the first idea that should come into it is this talent fun? Is this spell fun? If it's fun, and it does stuff, then that's cool, that's interesting. But when they design stuff and it's like, is this dot fun? Is Reap Soul fun? No, it's not fun. It's every 45 seconds I cast it. That's it. That's the story from start to finish. So they're going to be removing that in favour of other things. And what you probably have noticed as well is my bars are pretty full. Yes, they are. Now, there's a lot of workarounds here. There's a lot of TBC stuff, gameplay going on here to fix problems that exist right now, but are not going to exist in the next build of the Affliction Warlock, so we'll talk about them as well. So we start off with Agony. Agony is now our soul shard generator, as you can see here. It's not Corruption anymore. Corruption is in a weird place right now. One, it's barely worth casting. Let me explain that. Corruption does extremely low damage, like crazy low damage, and the alphas, we don't really care too much about damage, alright, because that's not been decided yet. So no doubt towards the end of Legion Alpha, or at some point, Corruption definitely will be worthwhile. Right now, it's definitely worthwhile to cast, but if it falls off, you're not arsed. With an Affliction Warlock, which is generally based around dots, that should never be the case. Your dots should be like, oh my god, Corruption fell off, I should fucking hurt myself right now. I should instantly reroll to a fucking Hello Kitty Island adventure because dropping Corruption is noobish. Right now, that's not the case. Our filler is now just Drain Life. That's it. So one of the big complaints you'll see is that the spec is boring, because people are like, well, you just put Agony up, you just put Corruption up, and you just put Drain Life, and you take your hands off the keyboard, and this is it. That is so wrong, it's hilarious. It's absolutely ridiculous that people believe that is the case. Because if you're casting a lot of Drain Life, you're playing the spec incorrectly, alright? A couple of other changes then. We no longer have Dark Soul. What we have instead is Doomguard. Doomguard is, again, super boring. Why? We don't really have any interaction with it. It seems to not really snapshot anything of worthwhile value. I'll be completely honest with you, and this is something that is disgusting to me as a player who focuses on really getting you guys to push yourselves to the absolute max. Doomguard is so dull and costs a soul shard, and everything else the Affliction Warlock does is so interesting that on some occasions I've actually just forgot about my Doomguard until later in the fight, where usually I'd be like, you've got to get this thing out. But especially if it's a fight like a 5-man boss, where it's not going to last 3 minutes anyway. I do loads of other stuff, and then it's like, eventually I'll pop a Doomguard, and that's about it. I'm like, oh yeah, I've got Doomguard. But because we don't have, like, Dark Soul or anything like that that actually interacts and makes me care about the spells I cast after it, I just press this and fire and forget it. It's kind of like a very, very weak mirror images. I mean, it pops, it does its damage, and then it fucks off and disappears. That's Doomguard. It's not interesting. It doesn't fit the Affliction model. Affliction shouldn't, for me, have any real involvement with demons. The demons should be, the way I see the class fantasy, which is a huge part of Legion, is that Affliction has dealt more into the history and the sort of relics and the tomes of curses and disabling and evil magic spells which cause pain and suffering and all that. And demons should be secondary. So having Doomguard as the primary cooldown of the Affliction Warlock doesn't even seem to fit. And all the other stuff I manage just seems to work so much better. Now, although my bars are full, a lot of this stuff is utility stuff, so you still have things like Hell Funnel. We still have our AoE spell, Seed of Corruption, and we still have Command Demon, which is fine. We still have Fear, we still have Life Tap, because we've got to control our mana still. We still have Unending Resolve, we still have Banish, we still have Enslaved Demon, we still have Soul Stones, we still have the ability to create the Soul Wells and summon people and all that kind of stuff. So most of this stuff is utility. Obviously, Darkflight there is a racial. All this kind of stuff is going on there. The rest of the stuff is talent stuff. So it's very basic level, guys. It is Agony, it is Corruption, it is Drain Life, and Unstable Affliction is our new sort of nuke spell. Yeah, that's our nuke spell. So previously you would have things like Haunt, alright? So now you have Unstable Affliction, which has some sort of unique properties which work in different ways. Unstable Affliction is now spammable. It costs a soul shard, and when you refresh it, it stacks, but it doesn't stack in the way you might think of something like Agony. What it actually does is when you cast Unstable Affliction, if I generate a few soul shards here, I can probably show you this. I won't be able to click them yet, miss. We'll generate some soul shards from that. What it'll actually do is you'll cast Unstable Affliction, and then when I recast it, what it does, it goes, oh, you had Unstable Affliction on already. How much damage did that have left? Cool. We're going to add that to the new Unstable Affliction. So what you'll see is when I press it, the damage just goes up and up and up and up and up. Okay? That's how it works. So it went up a little bit because I have no procs or anything really. I have like haste, which isn't going to be a big deal. But that's what it does, okay? It goes, okay, you had Unstable Affliction on already. How much damage did that have left? I'm going to add that into the new Unstable Affliction, which means you can spam like 5 of them with all your soul shards and get a huge Unstable Affliction if you do it under the right circumstances. But that doesn't mean that's the only way to play it. I think a lot of people read this and were like, oh, so all we do is we build to 5 shards, then we dump our Unstable Afflictions, and then we do it again. For the most part, yes, you do that, but you don't have to do that. And there are some artifact traits that really sort of emphasize that that's not the only way to use it. But that's something you're going to be thinking about. You're going to be thinking about it. And I like that. Any spec that makes me go, okay, when do I want to use this? That's interesting. We obviously have that classic, or I would say it's classic now, Warlock style of play, which is we don't want to overcap our soul shards, which you can do. So you're going to be dumping some Unstable Afflictions that aren't mega buffed. Yeah, similar to what you do with Chaos Bolt. If we have like a lot of embers, we want to dump some Chaos Bolts to make sure we don't waste embers, because that's obviously a DPS loss overall. You're going to be making those kind of decisions with the Affliction Warlock, alright? Now, let's talk about our artifact weapon and how it works. We have Ulthalesh, the Deadwind Harvester. Okay, now this does a number of things that are going to change in the next build, but right now, killing an enemy empowers the Deadwind Harvester, increases your shadow damage by 10%. That seems pretty cool, right? But that's really not the important part. The really important part of the Ulthalesh is when you kill something, it doubles the power of all passive effects of the Harvester, right? That is your new Dark Soul. A lot of people didn't seem to click this, but this is where your big power comes from. This is more powerful than any trinket in the game right now. Nearly everything except Reap Soul, in fact, everything except Reap Soul, is a passive effect that will be doubled when you kill something. So you have things like Inherently Unstable, where the crit strike chance of Unstable Affliction is 10%. So when Deadwind Harvester procs, that's now 20%. We have abilities like Perdition, increase the critical damage of your Agony, Corruption, Drain, and Unstable Affliction by 5%, stacking up of course. So when we kill something, that is then doubled and gets significantly more damage. Alright? So everything here is passive. So you see things like corruption damage, shadow damage overall, each character corruption. All these things double up when you kill something. So that is your important part. That is your DPS cooldown. Why am I calling it a DPS cooldown? You can plan for this to happen. And the way they've done this, obviously you can think to yourself right now, what about a single target boss, Preacher? How do I kill things on a single target boss? And you're right, if you can't kill anything on an Affliction Warlock, then you're basically a huge chunk of your DPS is lost. So the way they countered that is adding this extra tools up here, is Tormented Souls periodically attempt to escape the Harvester. Killing them refunds 10% mana. Now the 10% mana we obviously don't care about too much. What we do care about is that we have the choice to kill something. Yeah, we have the option to kill something. So if I just dot these up, any moment now, we're going to see a Tormented Soul appear, and that's going to start, there he is, he's going to start floating towards the target. This does a lot of things. It should trigger your mind to say, oh shit, I have a Tormented Soul up. I can kill that. That means I'm going to proc my Deadwind Harvester, and then I have all these buffs in which to make decisions. Now, most of those decisions are going to be, I should start spamming Unstable Affliction, right? So you're going to stick a dot over this, and your Agony's going to start ticking it down. You're going to use Agony for the most part, because that gives you more chances to proc Soul Shards, as I just talked about earlier. Boom! That dies. Boom! Here's your buffs. Wrath of Consumption, that's that buff from killing stuff. And more importantly, the Deadwind Harvester increases those effects of the Deadwind Harvester. So that is how you time it. It's not a case of a Tormented Soul spawns and you're like, I must fucking kill this thing straight away to get 10% mana. No, it's noobish. What you got to say is, okay, in a few seconds, I'm going to proc the Deadwind Harvester, get all these huge buffs, and then I can start making decisions. Now, most of those decisions, as I said, will be, this is time to start spamming Unstable Affliction, and it times itself pretty well, especially in single target, when you're using the talent Soul Effigy, we'll talk about soon. It times pretty well, so by the time the next Tormented Soul spawns, you have 4 to 5 Soul Shards. They've worked it out and balanced it in that way. Okay? Understood? Good. Everything's cool. So let's talk about the talents then, and then I can actually talk about the gameplay, once we understand things. Now, I think a crying shame here, a real crying shame here. And as this is the first real class analysis I'm doing, we should talk about some of the philosophies again that seem to be going on in the Blizzard offices. What they decided to do is, in order to stop people looking for the mathematical best talent, they decided to make it so fucking obvious that you can't go wrong. And what do I mean by that? In most cases, your ability to do single target DPS or AoE DPS is fundamentally crippled in either direction, depending on your talent selection. If we look at the most vivid example of that would be the Ret Paladin. On the right-hand side of the Ret Paladin tree are all AoE talents. On the left-hand side are all single-target talents. If you take these single-target talents, you are fundamentally crippled from doing AoE damage. You just can't do it, right? And that's the choices they've gone with. So that doesn't mean people are like, what's better single target? Is it going to be Siphon Life, Soul Harvest, or Sow the Seeds? Sow the Seeds gives you 5 Seed of Corruptions at a time. There's no decision there. If you're doing AoE, it's Sow the Seeds. And this is trying to stop people saying, well, this is like 0.2% DPS higher, so you have to take it, right? You have to take it, otherwise you're a fucking filthy, scrubby bastard. And they honestly changed that. They just said, well, this is single target, that's AoE. There's not much choice there. That's just the way it's going to fucking work. So that's something to bear in mind, that you'll see a lot of that. What I think is the criminal part of this is the Affliction Warlock and many of the specs in World of Warcraft have now existed for so long and have undergone so many changes over their history, is that they could have used the talent system by now. In Legion is a good time to say, why don't we offer people the different playstyles that Affliction has had over its lifetime via the talent system? Because there are many people who like the TBC version, there are many people who liked the Wrath of the Lich King Kata version, and there are many people who liked the WOD version. We could use the talent system to make that happen and answer the prayers of all those people. That would have been a really cool idea. So let me give you some examples of what I'm talking about here. Well, you have at tier 15 is Haunt. Now, Haunt is basically a leveling spell, alright? It's target switching on the Affliction Warlock right now is its worst thing. We don't have Soul Swap outside of PvP, so target switching is not great. If we want to nuke down something like a Doomfire, the way I would do it right now is probably have a lot of dots up, or, well, dots on Archimon, for example, and a Soul Effigy, and I would be building my Soul Shards and have a Tormented Soul out and trying to time that with the spawn of a Doomfire. Even then, by timing my proc of Deadwind Harvester to its absolute best and having Soul Shards ready, the best I could do to nuke down a priority target is to put an Agony up so I keep getting shards, fuck Corruption off because it's a bit of a waste of time, and then start spamming Unstable Afflictions into it. Even then, that is many casts of Unstable Affliction, and it's a dot, so it's still got the ticking time to do to actually kill a target as a priority. So our target switching is pretty shit, but that's okay. Not every spec needs to be amazing at target switching. There are potential for that to hold you back on certain encounters. I'm not going to deny that. But it's not the end of the world that some targets are better at, like, full-on focus damage and some are better at quick target switching, but their overall single target damage is weaker. That's okay. That's alright, and I can live in that world. So, Haunt is a talent that exists in my mind as a byproduct of the removal of glyphs as we know them, right? Glyphs are a very different beast these days. So what we used to have, around even up until the end of Warlords of Draenor, is certain glyphs that change the way your spells worked in order to boost your leveling experience. So you would have things like Glyph of Deadly Momentum for rogues that refresh things like Slice and Dice, refresh things like Recuperate, which is your heal over time, which is really cool for leveling, but not that great in a PvP or PvE world in endgame. It's not that viable there, and there should be a glyph that's better in those scenarios. Because we don't have that choice anymore, they've had to kind of jury-rig these into the talent system, yeah? So we have things like Haunt, which is a bit of burst damage that resets when the target dies. It kind of, some people are like, well, you can kind of use it to kill a Tormented Soul, but do you want to do that where you can put an Agony on there and get more Soul Shards, which is more Unstable Afflictions? Do you want to do that? Not really. It's a 15-second cooldown. Is it great for burst targeting? No. And is there any encounter where we're going to need this kind of burst every 15 seconds? Not really. Are we going to get most of the benefit out of the target dying? Not really. It's just one of those things that's like, I get why it's here, but even in leveling, honestly, I found myself not using it because there's many other choices to do. Even Unstable Affliction refunds the Soul Shard, right? So that works already in that regard. So Haunt's a waste of time. Writhe and Agony is very cool, though. As I explained, Agony is our Soul Shard generator. What does that mean? It means we give a shit about Agony. We give a shit. This is the problem with Corruption. The Corruption just does nothing of interest. It's just a dot that does damage. And that is the full story of it. So Agony, we give a shit about. Agony and Writhe of Agony play hand in hand. We don't want Agony to fall off because we're going to be generating less Soul Shards. That's not that fun. What we care about is keeping Agony maintained and Writhing Agony, which doubles the stack of Agony. You'll see Agony usually stacks to 10, yeah? You guys probably know that by now. But Writhing Agony means it'll go up to 20, which just means it's doing significantly more damage. Which means we care about that and we want to keep it on, and Writhing Agony plays into that. But, is it interesting? Would we not keep Agony on without Writhing Agony? No. We would still keep Agony ticking as normal because it's a Soul Shard generator. It's just an added bonus to that effect. But it works. I like it. It's okay. Drained Soul then kind of returns you to what you had in the past, where if you kill a target with Drained Soul, you'll get the Soul Shard and all this kind of buffs, which helps you go on the line. But generally, I found this to be rather weak sauce, okay? Rather weak sauce because I don't like draining. And this is what I'm going to talk about now. I don't like draining. I really find draining boring. Yeah, I don't like taking my hands off the keyboard. I don't like clicking drain and then sort of just letting it channel. Yeah, Mind Flay was okay because we could cut Mind Flay, we could clip it, and of course we're going to be clipping Drain Life. But as a general mechanic, draining something, I don't particularly enjoy. But that's not to say that I'm like the authority on that. I can't tell you what to enjoy or not. Which means this. This could have been the opening gambit here to set the tone. Let me just say some things that some people might like or dislike. Haunt should be removed and replaced with Shadow Bolt. Shadow Bolt replaces Drain Life, yeah? That would have been great, because I fucking love Shadow Bolt in my Affliction gameplay. As somebody who was a main Affliction Warlock during the Burning Crusade, I loved that style of play, and was a main Affliction Warlock in Method for a couple of times. and had Shadow Bolt gameplay there with Shadow Embrace, as some of you remember, and it doesn't matter if you don't, but needless to say, I much prefer the Shadow Bolt gameplay over Drained Soul. Give me the choice. Give me the fucking choice of either. Is that a problem? Just balance the damage. It's no big deal. Shadow Bolt has a cast time and 1 instant burst of damage. Just balance that over how often people are really draining. That would be more than fine in my opinion. Shadow Bolt could be there. Rather than you can stick around. But then, what about people who prefer the really dot-heavy style of play? There are some indications that that was definitely an idea for the Affliction Warlock in the initial Legion design. It's unfortunate we've moved away from it, but we have things like Siphon Life in the talent tree, which we'll get to soon. Change Straight Soul to Malefic Grasp. Yeah? Malefic Grasp promotes quicker ticking dots, more refresh time, more dot maintenance. Writhe and Agony doesn't promote that at all. Writhe and Agony could actually be more beneficial in an AoE scenario. What we could go for then is we could have Shadow Bolt, Writhe and Agony, and Malefic Grasp. It works in that way and promotes a dot-heavy style of play over an Unstable Affliction nuke style of play. Yeah? Writhe and Agony promotes an Unstable Affliction nuke style of play. Haunt promotes fuck all. And Drained Soul doesn't really promote anything either. It promotes trying to grab some shards, really. That's its main benefit. And then you have these 3 choices, the stepping stones to different styles of gameplay, which can then be promoted and synergized as we move down the tree. I would have loved to have seen that. Moving down then, we have Contagion. Unstable Affliction also increases all damage you deal to the type by 5%. That's not too bad. As I said earlier, in most cases, we're going to be proccing Deadwind Harvester and then spamming our Unstable Affliction. Outside of those windows, our damage, honestly, is pretty lackluster unless we're doing serious AoE. So Contagion kind of makes sense. Is it interesting? Not really. It's a passive, but I understand, and I think we always have to bear this in mind, is that they are trying to promote some people not liking having many buttons. It's too much for them to handle, is what we're being told. Which I actually think is rather offensive to the player. I think it's offensive to say that, oh, well, most players just can't handle more than like 3 buttons, which is fucking ridiculous. In this day and age of games, Jesus fucking Christ, man. But still, that's what it seems to be promoted. Is we don't overburden the players, spell bloat and all that. Sure, Blizz. I mean, I'll take your word for it that there are some players who are like that. Whatever, right? It's not for me to say, but it just seems to... There are so many of these just passives, don't really care about what they're doing. At least this makes some sort of sense. Absolute Corruption is generally what I take. Why? As I said earlier, Corruption is barely worth casting. Absolute Corruption makes Corruption permanent in PvE. That means that I can fire it once on things like the boss or my Soul Effigy, and then I don't give a fuck about it ever again. Alright, it's done. I don't need to press that button ever again. If I use my Sow the Seeds to drop a Seed of Corruption on things, which corruptions all the targets, then I don't need to worry about it falling off. It's not another dot to maintain. And I should point out right now, Affliction is heavily maintenance. If you don't like a lot of micromanagement, you're not probably going to like Affliction. Some of the changes that are upcoming are going to reduce the micromanagement a little bit, but still, Absolute Corruption takes the burden off an already very weak source kind of spell. Unfortunately, it comes in with mana tap, and as I said earlier, talent should always start off with the idea is this talent fun? Is consuming 40% of your mana, which leads to more life taps, which leads to not actually casting damaging spells, for a completely flat and generic damage bonus fun? No, it's not. This seems to be harking back to things like Glyph of Life Tap or the Soulfire buff. These sort of annoying, frustrating maintenance buffs that have plagued Warlocks several times throughout their life. And they've added it in as Mana Tap. Mana Tap still seems to be existing as of the recent blog post. It's going to stick around. They've even brought back Inquisition for the Rep Paladins. Apparently there's a section of the WoW community that really enjoys these fiddly maintenance buffs, like Root of Power. They really like them for some reason, or maybe someone in the Blizzard offices really likes them, because I've never seen these guys be like, oh shit, can we have Glyph of Life Tap back? I've never heard anybody say that ever. I never saw anyone begging for Inquisition back to the point where it's like, okay, we're giving you back, guys, we've heard your cries, now you can have it back. Who the fuck was saying that? I never saw that, but I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I don't check it daily, but still, Mana Tap is just, is consuming 40% of your mana fun? I don't see why that's fun at all. It's needlessly punishing. And it seems to be like, oh, well, we could give them a talent that gives them 50% increased damage, but that's got to come with a punishment, right? Do talents have to come with punishments? That doesn't sound like fun. It sounds like, ugh, I have to... What I really hope is obviously that this isn't mathematically better. 50% increased damage all the time, or 5% during the Unstable Affliction windows with having to cast... with Absolute Corruption, having to... The more global cooldowns we get from less corruptions is better, or whatever it might be. I really hope it's not the case, but it certainly seems to lean that way, even in my little quick mental maths. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. Is there any reason we can't abuse the Unstable Affliction and the Deadwind Harvester procs like we're already doing without Contagion? No. And Mana Tap seems to increase that by 50% damage. It does work with Pandemic. I should probably show you this. It does work with Pandemic. I just want to point out at the start of a fight how much mana this takes. Boom. But you can see it goes up to 20 seconds. If I then use Mana Tap again, you'll see it'll go past the 20 seconds to 25 seconds. So you can refresh it early. I guess that's some sort of bonus. And there is a rhythm to it. You obviously want to be using Mana Tap before you live tap, because if you give yourself more mana, Mana Tap is going to take more mana. Yeah, you get the idea. It takes less, but still, even like pre-pull, if I like pre-pull, I want to get like a large stack. I want to get the maximum amount of Mana Tap up because we might be bloodlusting or whatever. That's a lot of mana that I lose at the beginning. Look, I'm down to like 200k mana of 570 already. It's fucking crazy. This talent is just bafflingly stupid, and I don't understand. It feels lazy as well. It's not fun. Whatever, enough said. Soul Leech Ball Call and Howl of Terror. I would have really loved to see here the idea that we have the PvP trees now. Could we have had better CC? I'd like to have seen Shadow Fury back, which is far more PvE friendly. How often have we really used Howl of Terror in PvE for the last few years? No. I mean, I basically, if I'm being honest, I demoted someone in the Burning Crusade for using Howl of Terror in a Heroic Shattered Halls run. It was, to me, it was like, if you think that's okay, you're so bad at this game, we can't use you in a raid environment. If you think in PvE, AoE fearing everything in a not dangerous scenario, and having them run all over a dungeon that's very compact and will pull all the mobs is a good idea, I really question your sentiment. But Shadow Fury and stuff, that would have been fine. Can we have that back? Soul Leech makes sense. I will point out that another design philosophy seems to be that defensive cooldowns and something close to that, so CC or movement speed, going hand in hand now. So you're going to see evidence of that here with like Soul Leech, okay? Soul Leech and Mortal Coil, kind of, and Howl of Terror not so much, but also with Dark Pact and Burning Rush and Demonic Circle. These are movement tied to a defensive ability. It's a very weird idea. I kind of see where they're coming from, because some could say, yeah, being able to get the fuck out of the way is just as important as being able to stand there and take some of the damage. I kind of see where you're coming from, but we don't know when we'll need a Dark Pact. We don't know when we'll need to Demonic Portal, or we'll need to run really fast for a significant period of time. I don't want this choice to be a choice. I want to be able to pick them separately. I would much prefer to have different styles of defensive ability rather than this being lumped together. But yeah, I would really love to have seen these be more PvE orientated and leave things that do like AoE CC on people that I don't care where they go, particularly being left to the PvP side of things. That would have been nice for me. Siphon Life. Everyone was excited to see Siphon Life make its return. Now, unfortunately, it's not worth it right now. It does less damage than Corruption. The heal isn't really worthwhile unless you're going to put up loads of Siphon Lives on various things, but it's just an unnecessary thing. I mean, the scenario where this is worthwhile is really weak, especially because it's in the same tier as Sow the Seeds and Soul Harvest for a certain extent. But this would have played into the Malefic Grasp style of play. Your dots become significantly more powerful if you can make them tick faster. Do you see what I'm saying here? We could have had things like this baseline ability here and then use Siphon Life in order to make this work. That would have been much, much better. I would have appreciated Siphon Life in a world where I can use Malefic Grasp and gone back to a very dot heavy and heavy refresh style of play. That would have made sense if I prefer that style of play. So, Sow the Seeds is the best ability of all time, ever. And it doesn't even matter if the damage is shit. It's so good. What does it do? It fires out 5 Seeds of Corruption at the same time. And Seed of Corruption pops when any of them pops, which means you get that really satisfying boom. Well, it's more of a pop, pop, pop when it goes off. That pop, pop, pop. And it's so cool. It's so, so fun. You set everything up. You obviously get a lot of agonies going to get a lot of soul shards back, because Soul Seeds does make your soul Seed of Corruption consume shard. Something to bear in mind for something I'm going to talk about later. And it does huge damage. It's really fun. Love it. Makes AoE so cool for Affliction. Makes it an enjoyable and satisfying experience. Is it fun? Yes. This is, again, the fundamental thing. Talent should just be fun. Is this fun while AoEing? Absolutely is. But again, you are crippled for AoE if you don't take this. I'm just pointing that out. Multi-dotting just ain't as big a deal anymore. It really is not. Multi-dotting, for the most part, the Affliction Warlock is about generating more soul shards. Soul Harvest. So, Soul Harvest feels a little lackluster. It makes sense somehow. It has a cast time, which I really despise, because you can generate shards while you're casting it, which is a real fucking bummer, because it obviously diminishes its power. It gives you 5 soul shards. It does mean you can do some heavy back-to-back unstable affliction stacks, especially if you've got other targets that are about to die, and you can kind of time that, which is a great thing, in order to keep generating shards and keep getting the Deadwind Harvester to proc back-to-back to keep that huge buff up and doing lots of back-to-back unstable afflictions, which means you just get absolutely ludicrous damage. And you can also use this in time with things like moments during an encounter where the boss takes heavy damage. So you could do back-to-back things with it. You can only spend the shards of unstable affliction, by the way. So this is what this is for. Unfortunately, as I said, it has some drawbacks. One, it has a cast time, which means you can generate soul shards. They're not capped anymore. So it means if you have multiple agony sticking, your soul shard fill rate is huge. And they balanced that quite well with something I'll talk about later. But you will get so many shards back when you start multi-dotting that Soul Harvest loses its power there. But again, that's when you're AoEing, which means you're probably going to be taking Soul Seeds anyway. It doesn't feel fun. It's great for the start of the fight because you will only start ever with 1 soul shard. They very quickly drop you down to 1 soul shard before the fight. You obviously want to start with 5 for the most part, although there is some ramp-up time with Affliction right now. It just feels that later in the encounter, when it comes back off cooldown, I'm excited that Soul Harvest is back. No, not really. The reason is, I'm in a rhythm then. I can't make much use of these soul shards outside of being able to kill my tormented souls in a single target fight, because I'm generating weak unstable afflictions that are missing like 50% of the benefit that they could potentially have, which leads it to be a little bit like, we could do something better here, like Nightfall. Old school Nightfall, right? Can we have Nightfall back? That would be really nice. Now again, some of this is changing in upcoming blog, so don't worry about it too much. I'm not going to be too detailed on what the upcoming changes are. Needless to say, some things are moving out, like Demonic Servitude is moving around and all that kind of stuff. But still, it's more the case of, can we have Nightfall back? If I've taken Shadow Bolt, Nightfall plays into that. But then you're going to say to me, Preacher, what if you haven't taken Shadow Bolt? How does Nightfall work? I would like it to either give me a free Shadow Bolt. That would be cool, because we don't have a lot of time to cast at the moment with Affliction. Or it empowers my Drained Soul on my Malefic Grasp and turns it into something very much like Mind Flay Insanity in the current Wad Shadow Priest iteration, which makes me care more about Drains. I don't care about Drains right now. They don't do anything. They just do a flat damage and are basically something to do when you can't do anything else. If I took Nightfall, that would make me care again. So I have Sow the Seeds, I have Nightfall, or I have extra dots for a Malefic Grasp, which is already buffed by the fact that Malefic Grasp ticks dots faster. That would have been interesting to me. That would have been far more fun if we had the ability to have that back. Nightfall is cool. We get to cast it on the move, flying Shadow Bolts, or we get a nice drain that I actually care about. I don't care about Mind Flay, but I care about Mind Flay Insanity. You understand? Cool. Level 75, again, we got a similar sort of tier 245. Again, Demonic Circle. Was this ever a fucking problem, Blizz? Was it? It's been around for so long now, so many years, to have this personal teleport. Was it ever an issue? No. Can we just have it back baseline? Honestly, it's very niche. You have things like the Butcher that have a knockback, and then you get to teleport back. Was that a big deal? No. Can we not even have... I mean, Burning Rush is fine. Burning Rush is long-term. That's the whole point of it. It's long-term movement speed. Let's put Dark Pact into the Soul Leech Mortal Coil of Dark Pact. I can kind of see that for a bit of burst healing or a defensive or overall healing. That makes sense to me. Fuck Howl of Terror off, right? And then down here, let's have Shadow Fury, right? If I was going to say anything, Shadow Fury or Kill Jaden's Cunning, so we can use it on the next 3 spells. Something along those lines. We could have had anything in here that would have made more sense to me. Alright? Level 90. This tier should just go, honestly. Demonic Servitude is moving into this tier, I believe, or it's replacing Soul Harvest. It's going down here somewhere. Because it's demon focused. What did I say at the beginning? Affliction shouldn't be demon focused at all. It really should not be. And this should be a demonology choice. Especially the way Grimoire of Sacrifice is currently working. As you'll see from the two... I'm not going to go into these, you should know what they are. Grimoire of Sacrifice, obviously, you should sacrifice your pet, and it lasts an hour until you summon a demon. Now, currently on Legion... If I do this and kill my pet, I get the buff. Now, if I resummon my Impy Bro, you'll see, I have my pet and I have my sacrifice buff. I hope this makes it to live. Why? Your demons are really fucking crucially important. To any warlock worth his fucking pubes, you will know that your demons give you a huge amount of choice. Look at how much stuff I have down here, which is tied to my pet. I have Cauterized Master on my bars. I have Singe Magic on my bars and have it macroed. I have all these things that are really useful. I don't want to give them up. I really don't. And I certainly don't want to give them up for periodic Shadow AoE damage. I don't want to do that. What I would like is the option to have the sacrifice buff and have a pet, but his damage is shit, but I still gain his utility. Or even just make sure that I can still have the soul of my demon. Can I sacrifice my demon, but his soul remains? So I'd have like a spirit version of my imp following me around, so I at least keep the abilities. I hope some way this still remains, is that you can have the buff and have the pet's utility in some way. I'm not asked about him not casting Shadow Ball, or Fireball, I should say. I'm okay with that. But either or, an Affliction, this tier shouldn't exist. This is all demon stuff. It doesn't need to exist. Our demons are like the weaker part, or should be, of the Affliction toolkit. And I would be happy to say, get rid of this and put some Affliction stuff in there. Give us some extra Affliction stuff, because this is the Affliction tree, not demonology. Let's talk about level 100s then. Demonic Servitude is going, thank God. Well, it's not going, but it will move down here and we'll get something else to replace it. I don't understand why they want to make Doomguard boring. Doomguard should be a 10-minute cooldown, as should Inferno, and it means the Warlock is going hamburgers, yeah? That is really cool. It means the Doomguards mean something to the flavor of the game. What do I mean by that? There's a point when you're starting the pull in a raid environment and you see things like the Army of the Dead coming out, and then you see all the Warlocks, because of its nature, spawning the Doomguards, and you know you're going ham. That adds to that epic army feel of raiding. I love that stuff. Watering it down into a 3-minute fucking cooldown, which does barely fuck all, is not interesting. Yeah, and having it permanently out severely diminishes its interest because you don't care about it, and that's really sad. So I'm glad that this is moving down here and we're getting something more Affliction focused. Let's talk about Phantom Singularities. This is your AoE ability, okay? I'm going to take this so you can see it. I want to get rid of my pet because my pet's such a pain in the ass to control in the Legion Alpha compared to what they usually are. I'm great with macroing pets, but fuck me, they're annoying in Legion. Phantom Singularity. A Phantom Singularity, you place it above the target, it consumes the life, so basically it's Harvest Life, some of you remember that, Harvest Life, but it's sort of automatic now, and its range is huge. This is the new Barrage, by the way. There have been many tanks that have asked me to stop using Phantom Singularity, and I'm good at using stuff. I don't fuck up my barrages very, 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 very often. I mean, seriously, 1 in 100 or 150 in a 5-man might go astray, but generally speaking, never happens. Phantom Singularity is one of the things that I just can't do anything about, because it follows the target. If the tank moves a certain way, I'm fucked. It's got a tick. As you'll see, if I put my Phantom Singularity, we see the shadowy ball above there. You can see it just starts AoEing everything around it. There's no life drain animation. I think that's fine. Honestly, some people expected to see a Harvest Life type animation. That's too much busy work. It's too much for the screen. With all the sort of spell effects a lot of the specs get right now, it's a fireworks display in most occasions. But the problem with Phantom Singularity I've got is, one, it's kind of fire and forget. It's a 1-minute cooldown, you fire it off. Compared to See the Corruption spam, it's nowhere near as interesting. What I would love to have seen here is it take a little tape from Hand of Gul'dan and use the Soul Shard cost and refresh Agony. I don't care if the damage is nerfed in order to compensate for that. Because Agony doesn't last very long, right? Agony lasts, what is it? So 13 seconds, I think. 18 seconds. 18 seconds when you're multi-dotting like 5 targets is not a long time when you consider that you're also trying to put See the Corruption in there as well, which has a 2-second cast all of its own. Which means you have heavy, heavy Agony maintenance in between AoE, which kind of slows you down and then ramps up again, and slows you down and ramps up again. Phantom Singularity, I would love to have it like a 0 to 4 Soul Shard cost. And the more shards you spend on it, the more it refreshes the Agonies. Yeah, that would have been great, or ramps up its own damage, does something along those lines, but I certainly would have loved Phantom Singularity to have some interaction with Agony. That would have been fantastic and made the actual quality of life of playing the spec in big AoE far better, because we have so much else to micromanage, which would have been absolutely great. I'd love to see them implement something like that and balance the damage accordingly, of course. It's just a good player is going to be keeping Agony ticking on everything. So you get, especially if you've got Writhe and Agony, those are 20 stack Agonies ticking on multiple targets and giving you soul shards. They're a big deal. They're really important. And managing all those, especially targets that are moving and shifting around, it can become a little bit tedious, and I'd love Singularity to have some interaction there. Soul Effigy. Now, Soul Effigy is purely... some people say this is like Prismatic Crystal. It's really not. What this, in fact, is an extra soul shard generator. That's what it is. In order to balance out the idea of single target with not having multiple targets and allowing more soul shards to generate when you're AoEing, all that kind of stuff. So how does it work? You cast a soul effigy on a target. Ugh, mana tap. Ugh, get away. Let me get rid of that. You'll cast a soul effigy on the target. So you would cast that generally on the boss or the main hard-hitting target. And then you have this extra target here to dot up. And 50% of all damage taken by the effigy is replicated onto the original target. So no matter what scenario you're in, you are multi-dotting. If you're AoEing, you're multi-dotting the mobs. If you're single targeting, you're multi-dotting with your soul effigy. There is no real choice here in terms of single target because soul effigy is granting more soul shards. That's really important. And what you'll have is in most occasions while you're single targeting a boss, you'll be dotting the boss, you'll be dotting your soul effigy, and you'll be keeping agony ticking on your tormented souls, which means you have like 3 targets to multi-dot in nearly all occasions. Okay? Now, the problem with this is, 1, it's not particularly interesting. 2, it disappears. It doesn't have its nameplate on by default. I can see the nameplates. I have nameplates turned on, as you can see there, but it disappears. It's a really weak source animation. It doesn't follow you. It doesn't do anything like that. And if you start moving around, as some of the encounters we've seen in Legion are, oh my god, chaos. Absolute chaos. Which means this is a fucking real pain in the ass. Like a total pain in the ass. Not to mention, Tormented Souls are a real pain in the ass. Now, I will point out that Tormented Souls are being changed. So, although I will talk about their problems, they are being altered to work better. But Soul FG itself needs some counters. So what are the counters? This is why I've got these bars. 1, I have my focus target set to my Soul FG, which is a real waste of my focus target, but it is a counter to the fact that Soul FG is... If I've stood over here, for example, if I've had to move here, do I want to really spend another, like, 2 seconds casting a Soul FG again to put it near me? No. What if we're stood in a group? Clicking it in a group? A fucking joke, right? You know, in a raid scenario, if you're stunning everybody, and there's all people around here, are you going to see that? Think about doing Black Hand or something like that, where you all got to run in the circle, and your fucking Soul effigy is, like, trampled on by fat moonkins and shit. Fucking fat turkey bastard. Move. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. So the only counter to that, really, is to make it a Soul effigy. Is to make it a focus target, which means it should absolutely have its own fucking play like a demon. It should also be unattackable by demons for the people who are not good at microing their pets, because you will be dotting this up. So in order to counter it again, I have another macro. For some reason, I could not make a macro that would cast agony on my soul effigy directly. So what I had to do is make a... I could easily counter that because I have to make it my focus target. I could easily counter that by simply making a macro that agonied my soul effigy. Now, my soul effigy just died. Don't worry about that. That is because the soul effigy works by having the same health as the target you're killing. Right? So it'll disappear when the boss dies. But other than that, it's not a problem. The problem is training dummies have 1 health. So anything that ticks on my soul effigy is going to kill it. In this particular instance, but it works absolutely fine. It sticks around permanently through an encounter. And because of absolute corruption, it's worth putting corruption on it and forgetting about it. If I didn't have absolute corruption, I would never cast corruption on this. Unless corruption does insane damage towards the end of Legion. No way. No way. All I'm going to do is basically spawn it, make it my focus, and I'm going to use my macro in order to just check my focus target. How long does agony have left? Refresh my agony on it so it keeps giving my soul shards. And the bonus of that is getting some passive damage. The 50% damage that rolls from the soul effigy to the target that I have soul effigied. It's just there to make the Deadwind Harvester and the fact that you need about 5 soul shards in order to get good use out of Tormented Souls and Deadwind Harvester work. That is the only reason I think soul effigy exists. It's just a fix to the way the gameplay works. I'm not saying it's really bad, but it's generally after you play with it for a little while, it's really uninteresting. It's just something to press a button in order to put agony up to keep more soul shards going. Its other effects are really secondary. They could have done so many things with this. Have it follow you, have it float around you, have a target line or something like that, just to make it easier for other guys. Make sure pets don't attack it, because you don't want that. If people are just going to be stuck with pet assist, which is a terrible way of playing, as you guys well know, pet assist is really poor, and you should be out of the habit of doing that, hopefully by now. But loads of Warlock players do that, right? I mean, we have pet assist on by default. Is you will have your pet sometimes, especially if you're using a Fell Hunter or something and running over there. You don't want that. It's just so much lost damage. I would much prefer a talent that alters my soul shard generation and cuts out all this extra busy work. I understand that multi-dotting is a part of the Affliction gameplay, and it just kind of makes sense. But if I had better single target options other than a flat drain, I wouldn't care so much. I really wouldn't care so much. I would just make something like drain has an increased chance of spawning soul shards or something like that. So I'm not AoEing, I'm draining more often. than I would be otherwise, or have similar to the Demonology, where Nightfall, Shadow Bolt actually generates a soul shard, or generates 50% of a soul shard, or something along those lines, or a percentage chance of generating that builds up. That would be more than fine, and just balance it so on average every 15 seconds when a tormented soul spawns, we have enough shards to make use of it. That would be fine. And replace this with something just far more interesting. That'd be okay. I have Shadow Embrace up there. It's a buff I want to maintain when I do 2 to 3 target AoE. I have something like that, so I'm interested again in Drain or Shadow Bolt for making those buffs work. That would be fine if Malefic Grasp and Drain now cause Shadow Embrace, which was a debuff on top of dots, which increased shadow damage taken, and that's something that I can maintain across all targets along with my multi-dying. I'd be fine with that. Soul Effigy is just a fix to the style of play. So, having said that, that sounds pretty negative, but the talent trees overall are pretty weak, besides a couple of the good ones. That does not mean, by any means, that Affliction is boring to play. It's really not. It's super fucking fun. What you're going to be doing, for the most part, is, depending on whether you're AoEing a lot of targets, which means you'll be keeping Agony in a lot of targets and using Sow the Seeds to AoE everything down. That's a lot of fun. In single target, you'll be keeping your dots up on your main target, dots up on your Soul Effigy, and then watching for Tormented Souls in order to spawn and keep things ticking. So I can't kill my Soul Effigy at the moment. So a Tormented Soul spawns like that. As you can see, they're really hard to see. But as I said earlier, they're going to change it so you don't have Reap Soul anymore, but Reap Soul instead just kills a Tormented Soul, so you're not looking for them. The way I've counted it right now is looking for them but having a mouse over. So I have a mouse over Agony macro, as you saw there. I don't have to click it. I can still keep DPSing my main target and all that kind of stuff. But I can then Agony my Tormented Soul, get the buff, and get all the damage going from there. So there's lots of little counter macros and stuff you're seeing here, which are directly responsible for the gameplay changes. But those are being fixed anyway, and the quality of life is being turned up. I personally don't mind using mouse over macros and stuff, but that's not the way the general player base should feel. Especially in a world where, I should point out the hypocrisy here, that they said, oh, Demonology is too hard, we're going to change it. And we have this incarnation of Affliction, which is very, very heavy on maintenance, and super heavy in terms of Demonology and its complications and choices to be made. It's really funny that they said that, and it's obviously bullshit at this point, and just another example of Blizz being a little bit fucking facetious with what they're saying. This is not super easy to play. Not super easy to play. What I would then say is, let's take a look at our artifact ability. Let me just say, so I want to jump in this heroic for you guys. What we'll look at here is some of the more interesting styles of play. So I talked about AoE, which is obviously focused on Agony, and I talked about single target, which is focused on sort of Soul Effigy. Okay, so what about when we're doing 2 to 3 target AoE? This is where these other artifact abilities I don't have yet become viable. What we're going to be looking at here is abilities that have confused some people, like Compound Interest. So what's Compound Interest? Every Agony and Corruption you cast, that includes like spamming it on one target, will give you a buff up here that stacks up to 5. And it buffs your next Unstable Affliction by up to 50% when you have the 5 stack, okay? Now, the way this style of play works, which is very, very cool, is for 2 to 3 targets, you might not actually want to be doing the stacking Unstable Affliction. Yes, it's good to do that, but it doesn't mean it's the only way it can work. What you have here is a style of play with 2 to 3 targets where you're doing a lot of heavy maintenance. You probably wouldn't take Absolute Corruption in this case because you want to cast Corruption in order to get Compound Interest buffs. Is that you could get up to 5 stack and then drop a Stable Affliction. And that Stable Affliction will be 50% more powerful. But obviously the next one won't be until you cast 5 dots. Which means that you get a powerful one there, you're multi-dotting here, 5 buffs, and the fact that the dots are so maintenance heavy, it means that you get that buff really, really quickly. And that's kind of beneficial into Fatal Echoes. And this whole tree seems to be, this whole tier of the artifact weapon seems to heavily revolve around this style of play. What does Fatal Echoes do? When your Stable Affliction expires, it has a 25% chance to reapply itself. That generally promotes the idea of having multiple Unstable Afflictions ticking so that it can refresh on this target, refresh on that target, refresh on that target. 25% of 1 in 4 ain't bad. That ain't bad at all, especially if you're stacking Compound Interest and making good use of that. The rest of the stuff is sort of flat damage, but you have 3 distinct styles of play there, which alter based on your artifact weapon. And I think that, honestly, I love the Affliction Warlock. So I'm going to show you how all this works in action now. I'm going to jump into a dungeon. We're going to do a dungeon together. So if you want to avoid dungeon spoilers, you can skip that. Other than that, join me, guys, and let's continue this really fun spec. All right? Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going into the Eye of Ishara, which should be a lot of fun. So while we get started, let me talk you through what you're going to be seeing here. as I just explained in the previous video, or well, the previous section of this video, is that there are a lot of things you're going to see me doing which aren't necessarily representative of how this will finish up, especially considering that there are dramatic changes coming. So you're going to see me casting things like Reap Soul, you're going to see me using mouse over macros for my Tormented Souls. For general AoE purposes, we're going to be using Phantom Singularity and Sow the Seeds. And hopefully what I'm going to do here is give you a general idea of how this plays. Okay, so you'll see things like initially get agonies ticking because we want our soul shards to start rocking and rolling. I'm going to be using my imp on auto assist. Now, why? When we get into some serious AoE, which this dungeon has plenty of, you're going to start to see things like major maintenance of all sorts of dots and targets dying at all kinds of different times. That's going to be truly irritating, especially if you're using something like a Fell Hunter and require loads and loads of micromanagement, which is not something I'm particularly going to be using today. So what I'm hoping to see here is this tank pick up a little bit. I'm being a little bit wary of my Phantom Singularity. You might be saying, Preacher, why aren't you using Phantom Singularity? The reason for that is pretty simple. I just saw my Tormented Soul down. It didn't give me the Deadwind Harvester buff. As you can see, there's a lot of maintenance with dots. Huge amounts. And you've got to bear that in mind when we're playing this, is that this is a very, very serious deal, because you barely are going to see me draining. Barely see me draining at all. So while I go through this, don't ignore the gameplay a little bit for now. I'm just getting settled into what we're going to be doing here. And hopefully so you can watch what I'm doing and understand how this kind of plays. It's going to change a little bit, so the stuff you'll see me do with mouse over macro. So now we're getting a big pull, so now we can actually start kicking some ass. And you're going to see very, very little opportunity to actually, there's a Tormented Soul, so I'm going to use my mouse over macro on that, and then we're going to start doing some big AoE. Now, you can see there how crazy this starts to get. And you'll also see that my shards start flooding in like fucking crazy, and I can't get rid of them. This is why I suggested that it would be really nice if Phantom Singularity actually refreshed agonies, because you see I have to stop for a period of time and refresh all my agonies, and then you'll see that my soul shards essentially cap up in that period of time. But you'll also notice that everything starts to die real fucking quick when I actually get everything rocking and rolling, yeah? You'll see things like that happening a hell of a lot. There's my Tormented Soul. You can see how much of a pain in the ass these are to spot. I'd be surprised if many of you actually saw that happen. And also paying attention. Now, I don't have to tell me when or anything like that. So I'm paying attention up here to spot the little harvester icon. Now, what is unfortunate is I don't have access to a dungeon on the level 110 version of the specs, because they've disabled it. Because people are coming in with like full artifact power. I don't think they wanted to see that just now. And so they've kind of worked away from that happening. Get an agony on this guy. And you can pretty much tell, and I hope you can tell, that if the way the Tormented Souls work right now, if they spawn in all this chaos, and this dungeon gets real chaotic real fast, I can't get rid of these shards, man. They're just so fruitful. There you go. That wasn't too bad. But in general, once you start getting all of them, it becomes real fucking difficult to spot these guys and take full use of them. Now, I'm hoping that I can actually switch to Soul Effigy, and we'll take Soul Harvest for the sake of it. Let's drag that down to there. I'm actually respecking now because I don't want to have the... I don't want the tank to pull straight away, and I don't have the option to go full hamburgers on this and kind of show what's going on. So now we're going to be using Soul Effigy, and that's going to see me use a number of things. I'm saving my shards a little bit here. That's going to see me use a number of things. One of them is going to be macros in terms of setting it as my focus target. I'm actually going to leave this up so we can hopefully get the Deadwind Harvester buff as the tank pulls. That would be really nice. So if I do this, we've got full shards, which should give us a nice opener. So tank's going. Let's put the agony on now and hope for the best. Hope the timing works out really well. Get our Soul Effigy up. So Soul Effigy's up. What we're going to do is put Corruption and Agony on it. I'm going to set that as focus. Then we're going to go to town on the boss. We're going to get our Doomguard going. Going to get our Unstable Afflictions ticking. So I've got 7 seconds on my Deadwind Harvester buff, which means I can just go ham. Now, I'm hoping and praying. So we're tracking Soul Effigy here. Now, what you'll notice is that I actually activate my Soul Effigy via another macro. So you might see me not selecting it. That's because I'm using it based on a macro. Now, what we've also got going on here is an add. And there's my Tormented Soul. And we've also got more adds coming in. So we're going to get Corruption on them. I'm about to get some Deadwind Harvester procs. So there they go. Deadwind Harvester up. Refresh my agony on the Soul Effigy. We want to keep that ticking because I'm going to get back-to-back Soul Effigy procs here. Now, unfortunately, I got hit by the spear. I wasn't paying attention. That's my fault. But I'm back-to-backing it here, trying to get as many buffs up as possible. Keeping these agonies ticking as best as possible. Refresh it on my Soul Effigy because we're about to kill another target, which means more glorious Unstable Afflictions. Just keep them ticking. And now our damage is starting to go pretty ridiculous. We'll stick a Reap Soul up. Again, Reap Soul is a very uninteresting mechanic, unfortunately. It's a little bit of a shame. And keep these agonies ticking and going. And this is your general playstyle. I managed to spot my tormented soul out there in the middle of nowhere. So I'm trying to get as many shards as possible now for the unstable affliction burn that's about to go on now. There he goes. Deadwind Harvester on. And now utilizing that Deadwind Harvester proc in order to get as many unstable afflictions on the target as possible. Refresh my agonies as much as possible. Just stick an agony on this one. No need for corruption, and down it goes. And that's generally how the playstyle goes in single target, okay? So you're always multi-dotting. You'll also notice, and you might say I'm a big noob, but let me explain it for you. I didn't use Soul Harvest there. The main reason for that is I went into the fight with 5 shards, and in between that, it's difficult to pull that off. Now, there was certainly an opportunity in that one to use the Soul Harvest, but it's a 2-second cast time, and you're maintaining so much extra shit. So much extra shit that it's awkward. Soul Harvest is a really sort of... It's not an exciting cooldown for that reason. Ooh, the big stun. Try and get in some close range here. I know there's going to be some ninja pulls here. There always is. And tank generally dies here, so we're going to be paying attention. So we're going to get our agonies going. Let's fire off our Seed of Corruption. Now, hopefully we can pull off yeah, we're going to hopefully pull off, I was just saying, the Phantom Singularity without pulling a ton of turtles. As I said in the other video, Phantom Singularity is very, very much a... is very much the new barrage. There's a Tormented Soul. Let's see if we can get a couple of shards off that while we're spamming here. Get some agonies ticking. And now you can probably tell why I really wish Phantom Singularity would refresh agony. Because when you got this many mobs, Christ, it's hard to keep a track of everything. It really is. But it doesn't matter. I mean, it's kind of fun. You gotta just keep picking them out. Try and keep these 20 stacks going. It really upsets me every time a 20 stack agony falls off. It is a huge pain in the ass. And some might say, I mean, I have seen this argument already, is that it's just better to just spam your Seed of Corruptions until your shards are gone, and then go long term on it. So we're taking some damages. So I'm going to pop a little cooldown, defensive, refresh these 20s. Oh, 20 stack just fell off. That's a bummer. That is a bummer. Tormented Soul. And this can have an unstable affliction because we have the buff and it's going to die soon anyway. That dot damage tick there, and you'll start seeing ramp up damage like absolute crazy when we do things like that. It's so involved, isn't it? It really is a heavily involved spec right now, and this is what makes it fun. It has some quality of life issues. There's no doubt about that. That it gets fidgety, like refreshing agonies on a lot of targets. It just becomes a bigger priority where I really just want to be doing more Seeds of Corruption, and that's where Phantom Singularity could really take that pressure off. And I would love to see that happen. I would really, really love to see them just make that a little bit easier, because it just feels bad. And the only solution to it is just to not do it. There's a lovely buff there from our Tormented Soul. And it will be so much... Oh, so you get stunned just as I was about to start refreshing the agonies. Click through them. It's not as if the Blizzard nameplates help this at all. That's got to be said. You know what I mean? Blizzard nameplates are so fucking bad. There's no doubt about it. But I want to be doing more seeds, because look, it looks more exciting. It's way more fun. But I'm not struggling with shards either. That's why it makes some sense to me that we would have a different way of spending shards in an AoE environment. I wouldn't even be particularly adverse if instead of it being Phantom Singularity orientated, we're going to switch over to Soul Effigy here. I'm going to leave Soul Harvest for now. It's just something I don't particularly enjoy. Let's use our Cauterized Master, heal ourselves up. I wouldn't even be adverse to Seed of Corruption being tied in some way to... what am I trying to say? Seed of Corruption being tied in some way to Soul Shards, so that you get one big Seed of Corruption, and it depends on how many shards it consumes. That would be okay. We're full shards, so we're going to dump that away. It would be nice, of course. We are reliant in some way in shard spammage on actually getting Tormented Souls to proc, which is fine. I mean, it works out well when you go into like a fresh boss. It works out just fine in that environment, so it's not a huge deal, and it's not something I care about too much. But overall, it would be nice if, there you go, it spawns just as it dies, which is, you know, it is what it is. And it evade bugs. They have all sorts of issues, guys. They do. And then they start attacking you, and they keep you trapped in combat. Look at this guy chasing me. Get out of here, buddy. Have an agony. It's just one of those things that right now isn't great, but it's not a big deal. It doesn't spoil the spec by any means. And I think some people go overboard. It's like, oh, this makes the spec so bad, so bad. And it's like, it doesn't, bro. It really doesn't. Come on, detonate for me. Detonate. Boom, 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 boom. Look at that. When the seeds start going, isn't it the best thing in the world? Look at the mess I've caused. All that green shit is me, which is just fantastic. Once he actually gets going, yeah, there's the heaven that you were after. And I particularly love it. There we've got a Tormented Soul, so I'm going to stick an agony on that. Throw out a few more agonies while that seed detonates, and off we go. And you can see the seeds start going to work. It's just so cool. It's really cool. And I absolutely adore it. I love just this. It's simple and it's fun all the time. And that's all it ever needs to be. Simple and fun. and effective, as long as it's not a waste of time. Right? Like, you're not doing something stupid like rain of fire on one target and all that kind of shit. Then it's absolutely fine. We do have soul effigy here. These guys are kind of fucking monstrously painful. And they do them... They're quite clever how they do it in this dungeon. Is they do them single target. They're one at a time, I should say. They do them one at a time. And then you'll start noticing that... Oh, yeah. Alright, so there's our tormented soul. We haven't got any shards yet, but hopefully I haven't put my soul effigy on focus. There we go. So these are all little workarounds, and yeah, some of you might be watching saying, oh, that seems like such a pain in the ass. But bear in mind, Blizzard is changing it, right? They're changing it. So we've got our Deadwind Harvester proc, which means some unstable affliction spam as we finish this guy off. They are changing it so that your Reap Soul, this kind of monstrously boring dot that I'm casting, and it is monstrously boring, is actually going, and they will just have an ability that kills your tormented soul, so you don't need to track them, and the visual effect of the souls floating around will still remain. And that's all it needs. Once we have that, that's cool. No problem at all from me. So let's get a Seed of Corruption ticking while we throw out some agonies. Detonate for me, friends. And we should have shards rolling in. Seed detonation. Excellent. Pew, pew. Everything's dead. And we only got 2 shards out of that, which is... I was hoping for a little bit of a better shard return. We'll stick this guy on focus so we can make sure we've got agony on this guy. Cool. Use a Reap Soul as a detonator, and then we'll throw out a few agonies. Reap Soul is not the best detonator as it damage ramps up, but it's better than throwing a corruption, which will be instantaneously gone. Oh, fucking hell, my seed just killed everything. Seed boom! Seed boom, okay. Not really worth casting those agonies there. That's a fair point. Now, the more dangerous one, I believe, is the Wave Crasher, so we'll get a soul effigy on him. Put these dots out, make that the focus. Target some of these, get the corruptions going. Corruption, as I said in the first part of the video, is corruption's like barely worth casting, which is a real shame. But it's okay because... Oh, come on. It's a real shame, but honestly, if you have the permanent corruption, it's not the end of the world, right? So it just means that my multi-dotting here is reduced to just maintaining agonies. I'm fine with that. I'm really fine with that. That's okay. So we're on the lookout for some tormented souls. Now, this is actually a cool instance that we got. I did pick random, but it put us in here. Fresh agony on there, it's because tormented souls, you can see how much movement you have going on. Like, I'm okay here, but you'll see in the later bosses, like, finding the tormented soul is a real fucking bummer. Like, a super bummer. Get some agony refreshes going. Use that pandemic effect to multiple uses, and there goes my dead... Oh, come on! My tormented soul died. I'm gonna have to take some of this damage on the chin because I have Deadwind Harvester procs, bro! Come on, stop knocking me! No! The real bummer of having cast times when you're dealing with mobs like this. We still have a few seconds on Deadwind Harvester. We have a boss shortly, so I'm going to keep at least one. We'll pick up Soul Harvest so we can actually use that on the boss. Down you go. And you can see my Soul Effigy died there because it was tied to this target here. So let's move over to Soul Harvest, bring that back into the game. So we're going to spam the 3 shards away. Our Deadwind Harvester proc. We haven't got a Tormented Soul. This is kind of more like an actual start to a boss fight. So I like to open with my Soul Effigy. Right or wrong, that's just how I've preferred to use it so far. And then we move on to dotting here. Getting a Reap Soul up. Pop the Doom Guard. Check the shard situation. And then what I'm going to do is actually spam these away. Even though we don't have great buffs yet. And wait for a Tormented Soul to appear. So this is kind of the alternative way that I've seen of doing this. Is, oh my god, my Soul Effigy is there. Oh, I set the wrong focus. The nightmare is real. Now look at this. Now spotting your Tormented Soul in here, there he is a little bit of a pain in the ass. You multiply this by a raid scenario, and yeah, you've got some tricky situations. So what I'm going to do is get rid of my shards as that dies, Soul Harvest, and get 5 more shards while I'm now under the Deadwind Harvester buff, which should give me some good shit. Now, unfortunately, you can see the problem when you do this is the agony fell off on my Soul Effigy again. And this is all the kind of maintenance you have to do. It's a heavy maintenance spec, guys. It really is heavy maintenance. But it's fine. It has good rewards when things go well. And you start seeing the huge damage start to ramp up. And that damage comes from you. Really vital in Legion that the damage comes from you. I don't think there's enough of that going on. So we're trying to spot a Tormented Soul. We're getting to 4 shards. There it is. Excellent. I'm probably going to get another shard before there. So I'm actually going to get rid of it now. There it did. It appeared as I casted it, which is as expected. And then we're coming into, again, there's it just died. So start casting now. Boom. Just got the buff. As we start casting, agonies are good. One thing you do when you see a Tormented Soul is like a good habit. Is to refresh the agonies so they don't run out as you're like casting this stuff, which is more than fine for a playstyle to do that. Come on, I pressed drain life, so cast it then, please. Even in this chaos, it's all right. But the main thing I find myself doing when I'm moving, this is why I kind of wish Nightfall was still in the game, is I'm just basically looking for any old scenario in order to cast something other than a maybe slightly wasted Refresh Agony. Now I'm up to 4 shards. I've dotted my Tormented Soul. You might not have even seen it. It was there, and it's just procced my Deadwind Harvester, which means as we go into the kill here, I'm going to stack my Unstable Afflictions up. Use a Hellstone so we're all nice and safe, and that's going to die there without anything ticking. You can see the drain is such a minor part, isn't it? Oh, you probably want me to check the loot, don't you? I'm terrible for that stuff. You guys should know that by now. I'm really terrible at doing that. I don't have Sow the Seeds yet. This is also part of the annoyance, honestly. You can't respec while something's on cooldown. Previously, they had managed to work it so you could respec once you were out of combat. If something was on cooldown, like Soul Harvest, if you tried to spec back to it, it'd still be on cooldown. They seem to have lost the ability to do that or taken it out of the game. I have no idea why. They want you to respec so much in these dungeons, like all the time, that the restriction on that you've just used a big cooldown and now you can't respec is a real fucking bummer, because I can't really AoE without sow the seeds. Like, AoE without Sow the Seeds is a huge pain in the ass. In fact, I didn't realize we were going for this boss next, so hilariously, I'm actually going to respec back as soon as we get out of combat, which is just the way things go sometimes. I should be soul effigying these things and getting extra shards. The biggest complaints, then, that I've seen regarding the spec are the Tormented Souls. Yeah? Soul Effigy and Soul Harvest. Cool. Let me stick a dot on that Tormented Soul as we move over to the next trash. The Tormented Souls and Reap Soul and things like that. And you know what? It's fine. They're being changed anyway. I didn't pull that. Cool. Get away. Let's get the dots going. Let's Soul Effigy it. Focus it up. We saw some AoE there. Get the AoE going, get the Seed of Corruption ticking. It's not going to be as good without Sow the Seeds, but that's okay. These trash doesn't last long enough. But it does. This is kind of the point I was making earlier. Oh, look at my Tormented Soul. What a pain in the ass. There he is. Did I get him? Yes. Thank God for mouse over macros. If I was trying to tab in there instead of stopping to do damage, that would have really sucked. The real thing that you've got to watch out for with specs like this is that a lot of the issues that people have raised that I've already talked about are being fixed. They are fixing it. It's unfortunate they didn't do it into this build, so I couldn't demonstrate it for you. So you're seeing me... I don't want people to read into how much micromanagement and the mistakes that cause, because it does cause mistakes. I'm sure you're seeing plenty of them. It does cause mistakes because you're doing so many different things. There's another one. So we're going to Soul Effigy this one, dot up the Soul Effigy, make it a focus, do this, do that, get the dots ticking. They are being fixed, and overall, once that quality of life is improved somewhat, we've got full shards, so we'll get rid of a couple. It won't be a problem. The spec will actually be just fine, and it will mix into really well. Look at my my Tormented Soul is over there. I bet some of you can play a game from now on. It's like spot the Tormented Soul. This is going to die now. Cool. Let's switch over to this one, and we should go our Tormented Soul buff now. There we go. I now have the gut feeling of when my Tormented Soul is going off. Once you've placed enough agonies on Tormented Souls, you absolutely know that in like X amount of seconds, you get a feel for how many globals you have left before you can get rid of it. Before you know you're going to get the Deadwind Harvester buff, which is cool. A little bit of AoE here as we move on. It really does feel that you are so crippled if you don't take that talent. Like, AoEing these down, I mean, it's such a minor trash pack, it's not a big deal. But let's translate that into a boss environment, yeah? Where that big AoE is in the fight, and it is important, but it's not the majority of the fight. It's not the mega vital part of the fight. That's the boss damage. And you literally do cripple yourself in order to make it work. Because without Sow the Seeds, your AoE is so much worse. Like, hilariously worse. So we're going in here with maximum shards. Soul Effigy up. Get the dots going. Get a Doom Guard going. Oh, I've got Toxic Wound, which is annoying because I have nothing to do on the move, Blizz, which is super fucking irritating, by the way. There's my Tormented Soul. It's way over there. Oh my god. You guys spot that one? I would love to know if anyone's feeling honest and not just spending their time looking at it. How many of them you actually did spot. Right, so there's our Deadwind Harvester up. Many shards for the ladies. Agonies are looking nice. Many unstable afflictions. Good. Moving again. Agony refresh time. Which is no problem. I like it. I like it. Ooh, it's submerged just before I casted the Reap Soul. So we're going to get multiple adds now. Now, what I'm interested in is, yeah, my Soul FG is now out of range, which is a real pain in the ass. So focus that up. This ramp up time is a pain in the ass. There's no doubt about it. I'm about to get a Deadwind Harvester proc. There it is. Let's use it on these adds. Get rid of them. Let's put the next couple on here. Which is the really nice part of it, honestly, is that you can do this. So we've got this other ad over here. Refresh on the soul effigy. This is why you need a macro for that. Imagine having to look for this thing. And all the time, I'm spinning my camera in order to try and make sure I can see soul effigy, and I can see this and keep these 20 stacks going, which is fine. That's part of Warlock play. But looking for tormented souls, which is why I'll be so much happy. The specular should be a shitload more fun when you don't have this to look for. There we go. So let soul effigy's agony fall off, which is a bit of sadness. Bit of sadness. Not a great sadness, though. Whoa, much shit going on. Look how much crap's going on. And you're trying to track things. Come on. We're going to die here if no one interrupts that rampage. Yeah. Yeah, rampage. The idea of this boss, by the way, is I wasn't being super noobish there. All that AoE that you just saw wasn't really supposed to be going on. When this guy submerges into a hole, and when he comes back, you have to interrupt his rampage. So let's just let the guys know. All these quality of life things are going to be fixed, and that'll make it a really cool spec. The only things I would really, really like to see are the obvious. Just like, you know, if singularity refreshed agony, that would take that sort of really heavy maintenance feel out of it a little bit during AoE. And because you have such a cool, fun AoE spell, that's a really good thing. It's a really, really good thing. And I'm just hoping you get to see that. Do we have to ride? I've never wiped in here, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, even on the last boss. Do we have to ride all the way around? Wow, that kind of sucks. But still, nevertheless. I personally don't mind using like focus macros and macros for effigy and macros for mouse overs. I don't mind doing that, but I absolutely get that Blizzard doesn't want a new player to do that, right? They don't want that. I don't want, even me, I don't want my focus target to be consumed permanently if I'm having to do a boss by soul FG. I want to be able to put ads and you know, other dangerous mobs on focus. I want to be able to do that, even though boss mods will take care of most of like the cast time issues and stuff. Of course I want that. I don't want to just have my focus target restricted. I don't mind it. I can play around it, which is more than fine. But I don't want to do that. Let's address the idea that people have a lack of cooldowns. Now, obviously, as you've seen, Summon Doomguard is not an interesting cooldown. Soul Harvest is not an interesting cooldown. Does that mean that we need Dark Soul back? No. Dark Soul in and of itself wasn't an interesting cooldown. It's basically just a flat damage buff. And the Tormented Soul mechanic of itself is fine for that. It's more regular. It's more interesting. It gives you a plenty of warning before it's going to detonate. I really like it. It'll be far better when... I hope it's going to be far better. It'll be far better when Reap Soul literally just kills a Tormented Soul, should it be nearby. You might... I mean, I'm sure they can balance out the idea that I'm using Agony on them to just have that extra shard generation as they spawn. But either way, it's going to be just fine. And I'm having... let me get to my general thoughts on this as we move into the last couple of bosses here. I'm having a lot of fun with this. A hell of a lot of fun with this. This has been one of my preferred specs to play in Legion. It has the kind of depth and control and choices to be made that I truly adore, and a lot of specs have lost that. Unfortunately, a lot of specs have lost that in Legion, and it's been a little bit on the sad side. What I'm going to do now is I'm not going to open with Soul Effigy, by the way. I'm going to run and try and get my Soul Effigy somewhere in the middle, because he spawns all around this circle. So hopefully that means I don't have to recast Soul Effigy during the fight, which would be more than nice for me. So we'll just run in as we dot up. We'll start off with a Reap Soul, I guess, because it's got a cast time. And you should always start a boss fight with something with a cast time. So apparently we're in deep preparation. Are you ready? Bear Force 1! Yeah, buddy. We're ready, mate. Get in there, son. Come on. Ooh, bear. I assume you're pulling. So here we go. Get in there. I'm going to risk the precast. Let's get our Soul Effigy going. Get that up. Get the dots up. Get the Doom Guard going. And start paying attention for Tormented Souls and whatnot. And generating some shards, which is fine. Go away. Don't stand on me, please, though. That would be nice. I would really appreciate that. Refresh our agonies. We're still building up shards here. So you don't have that opening nuke. I mean, I could do it with Dark Soul because I've got so many shards right now. I don't need it. Get out of the way. There we go. We got our agony on. So refresh our agonies. We're about to go into hamburger mode. Yeah, I've got Toxic Wound. Motherfucker. See if I can keep it in one area. Oh, this is like... There we go. We got the Deadwind Harvester proc as it ran out. Nice, nice, nice. Come back. Let me stack these unstable afflictions on you. Ah, fuck you. Refresh the agony there. Dots on this guy. We've got plenty of extra soul shards, so let's dump some. And I'm looking now for this guy over here. Let's Dark Flight over there. Refresh that agony. Agony on this guy. And we should have plenty of shards going now. So I'm going to base my agony on the boss off the Soul Effigy. Agony on you. Agony on you. Agony on you. Use a Hellstone. That's dead now. Good. We're about to get Deadwind Harvester. So, let's go. Deadwind Harvester up. Oh, come on. Stop fucking casting on me. I'm just going to take it on the chin. Which is a real bummer. This just not having anything to do on the move really fucking sucks. Like, so much. Let's get our Soul Shards back. He's about to swap. Good. Refresh our Agony on there and there. And let's switch to this one. Now, where's the other one? He's over there. Cool. So, we're going to dot up all these. And we've got so many Soul Shards. Now, again, this should really highlight to you how little you're draining. Yeah, you are draining so very little. And that's okay. That's okay. And this is why I would like Shadow Bolt, so I feel like I'm fitting something in. We've got Deadwind Harvester procs for days. Get this going. Get all these unstable afflictions ticking on there. Now I'm going to swap over to some on here. And just keep controlling them. There's a Tormented Soul. Let's dot that up. I'm not resing you. Come on. Oh, Deeps. Deeps don't res. So we don't have... We got... Ooh, maybe now. Go. Let's see if we can dot up everything. Get as many unstable afflictions as possible on this guy. Refresh over here. Oh, we did quite well with our soul effigy positioning. That's fine. Reap Soul. God, I just forget about that spell so often because it's so uninteresting. It's really that uninteresting. And this is why I was saying, like, corruption and stuff. You just forget about it. This thing's going to die anyway, so let's just spam these on. You just forget about it because it's not interesting. And that's a real shame. If I had to tell me when or something, yeah, I'd cast it on cooldown. But as it is, it's not something I'm paying attention to. I'm looking at my screen all the time. I'm looking for Tormented Souls. I'm looking at dot timers for multiple targets at the same time. And honestly, that's far more interesting. And that's why Reap Soul was a bad idea. I kind of read it and was like, oh, right, really? That's what you came up with? That's not very interesting. And now you can probably see why. It is that uninteresting. This is why it was a poor idea. And I'm glad they're removing it. And it makes sense that a spell called Reap Soul will actually reap soul. So you might see some FPS drops in here. Obviously, there's a heavy rain effect. You guys can see that. But it's so huge. Like, the Ivyshara is massive. They're trying to take in the whole area and all the stuff. I mean, it's beautiful. It is wrecking FPS now, especially as the draw distance is so high. I mean, I'm still at flat 60. You guys should be seeing it in 60. But I have noticed on my machine, occasionally it will drop below 60, and my machine is a fucking beast, and that should never happen. So, just be aware that if you're on a lower-end machine, I mean, mine's one of the top-end ones you can get. This is the 980 Ti in this. Polymorph Fish. I fucking knew it. Ha! Cauterize Singe. People were asking me when why I'm using an imp so much. Especially my friends, I'm like, dude, are you fucking kidding me? The amount of debuffs and shit that are going on in this right now, and you're asking me about it. Oh, I didn't see that Tormented Souls. I bet you guys saw it, didn't you? Come here. Got you. The amount of fucking magical debuffs that go on in here that CC you or stun you that can be dispelled and people don't do it is fucking ridiculous. There are so many that I was like, give me my imp. I need to be able to dispel myself all the time. I don't care about being able to interrupt spells anymore. I've lost the will to interrupt for people. Everyone else can do that. I want to be able to dispel myself. That's like a way bigger deal in my eyes. So that's why we're doing that. If you're out of curiosity, if you're wondering why we're using MP, not just because I'm micromanaging so much other stuff, like we've got 3 things to dot here. Cool. It's mainly to make sure that, one, I have the freedom to micromanage anything without my Fell Hunter running around and having to micromanage him on top of things, because I'm multi-dotting everything. What would I really... If I was to tie, like, a pet attack to something, what would it be? I'm not even sure. Would it be Drain? No, I don't really use it enough. It could be Drain, I suppose. It wouldn't be Agony, and it certainly wouldn't be Corruption. And other than that, you don't have much to do. Would it be Unstable Affliction? Maybe. But I'm not going to open with that. It's one of those that it's like, I'd rather it just be an imp and just attack at range, honestly. And if it was a boss that like needed to die super priority, then yeah, maybe I'd do that. Die, Salt Sea. Spread my corruptions around in a really weak sauce way. Boo! Give me some shards for the boss. That's what I should have been doing here. 4 shards. 4 will do. 4 will do nicely. So this boss is kind of cool. Lady Hate Coil. We have to stay in the water, stay out of the water, which is a nice little mechanic. So we'll open with our Reap Soul again. Get our initial dots ticking. Then we'll put on our Soul Effigy. Focus it. Get our Agonies and stuff ticking. And then we'll pointlessly fire off a Doom Guard. Hey, isn't that fun? Get out of the water. Cool. And there's my wonderful little friend there. So let's refresh our Agonies because we're about to start nuking. 1 more Soul Shard would be nice. Thank you. And go. I'm not even going to bother with AoE particularly. Beacon Storm. Let's keep that off these things. If you're not sure, this destroys the platforms that you stood on. So make sure our agonies are good there. I'm not even going to bother with AoE. I'm not built for AoE, and this is how you feel, unfortunately. It's like, I'm not built for AoE, like, at all. So I'm not going to do it. We've got full shards, so we're going to get rid of them. Our Reap Soul's about to come off cooldown, which is cool. Get out of the water. Refresh our agonies while we run, because there's nothing else for us to do. Let's Reap Soul. There's our... That's what we were looking for, was that guy. And keep everything going. So we're about to have a Tormented Soul nuke. Cool. We've got 1 extra shard, so I'm going to get rid of it, because it's likely to proc as and when we're playing. And there we go. Deadwind Harvester up. This might be a nice time to use our gain souls. Gun back. Bup. We still have Deadwind Harvester on. I might use these so I can get some kills on these, hopefully. Get a couple of extra agonies. Refresh our agony on our soul effigy. And keep using these shards. Come on. Give me some more shard loving. Get out of the water. Will do. Bup, bup, bup. I would love some more souls. Come on. There we go. Sometimes you are, like, locked. This is why I really dislike... I really dislike this Soul Harvest spell. It's just... It's like, it could be so much more, and it isn't. We have Soul... Oh, shit, I missed my Deadwind Harvester proc while I was talking there. It's one of those spells that, like, it seems like a good idea. You use Soul Shards for finishers, right? So what if we gave you the ability to get all your Soul Shards? That would be cool, right? Well, yeah, kind of, but it just isn't, unfortunately. At the end of the day, it's just absolutely not. And that's a real pity. Now, my Doomguard hasn't reset for my boss. You can see how much I've been playing. I actually need to get repairs. It's been a long time in Legion since I've needed to repair anything. And the fact that I reroll in DC, get rid of my classes all the time. I'm also missing, because I can't play the 110, I'm missing out on a lot of the artifact power, which is a real shame. So I'm missing things like Compound Interest, which you might say, oh, this doesn't seem to work too well when dealing with 2 to 3 targets feature. Yeah, you're right, and that's basically because I don't have the artifact ability that makes that work. Now, you might say, well, you shouldn't need an artifact ability to make that work. You're probably quite right as well, but the fact of the matter is you do. So that's just the way it is. Get over it, go out with somebody else, deal with it there. And if I had Compound Interest and Fatal Echoes, I could certainly be doing more Unstable Afflictions passing around. I don't want you to walk away thinking, hey, don't you just Unstable Affliction on one target, because that's what you did in that video that time. It's like, well, no, it's just that right now that's kind of how I have to play it, because I don't have access to some other things. I did have access to them, and I could have demonstrated to you that, but Blizzard said, no, we don't want you to have that. So you don't have it anymore. Simple as that. I'm not going to get a fucking decent torment, Spirit Torment here, so we'll just use some Unstable Afflictions on here. Let's use a Cauterized Master. Help with the healing here. I've used Cauterized Master, which if you don't know is the heal from your imp. A lot of people don't even know what your imp does. How many of you there did not know that your imp heals you? Yeah, it totally does. It's got Cauterized Master here. Heals you for 2% of your health over 12 seconds, I think I just read. It's so cool in here. Oh, we got a Soul Effigy up. We've got a fucking Tormented Spirit, but it's going to die well before that. We have full shards anyway. I'm not going to bother. I'll save my Reap Soul. Exciting. I'm going to save it for the next one. Oh, you're going to get... This one's dead anyway. So I've got all this good shit going on now where I could probably unleash some fury. But I absolutely cannot, which is a bit of a pisser. Whoa! Hello. Get out of the way, buddy. Yeah, this. So if you don't know, you're about to see the absolute epitome of trying to spot tormented souls in our friend here, the Wrath of Ashara. This is going to get real crazy real fast. The general idea is that... I'm going to save my shards here, by the way. Is that the general idea is that you kind of stay as a group, and it makes it far easier for the healer to heal. But that's really not going to be happening at all in any way, shape, or form. Dispel me? No? Don't make me dispel myself. Oh, he did dispel me. Wow. Fucking hell, he's done his Silver Proving Ground. What a bro. What a bro. Right, the tide rises. Yes, it does. This is about to get real crazy real fast. So we need to get our Soul FG somewhere near the center. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a whole world of bad shit. Let's heal our MP up a little bit here. Okay, here we go. We're going to need defensive cooldowns to the max. Are you going, buddy? Go. I should have started precasting my Reap Soul. So we'll get in as we dot. And Soul Effigy should go around here, I think. That should be fine. There goes the Bloodlust. Good. Let's get started. There's our Tormented Soul. Good. Got it nice and early. Let's. We got Haste. We got Bloodlust, so we're going to pop a couple more shards. Let's refresh our Agonies. And now we're going into it. So we're going with our Deadwind Harvester proc. I'm going to stay in this damage. Sorry, bro. Use our Soul Harvest while we still have the buff up. Excellent. And big unstable affliction. So that's a nice, sturdy, unstable affliction there. Now I'm going to start building shards for the next one. And trying desperately, I'm not being targeted by much here, but you see this fight starts to increase in the amount of shit it throws at you very, very quickly. It ramps up. There's my tormented soul. That's what I was after. I'm at cap shard, so we'll get rid of that. Let's get our reap soul on because it's there. I got again cap shard, so let's get rid of that one. And there goes my Deadwind Harvester procs, just as we hit 5 shards again. It's really not worth, like, oh god, I should be fine there. Cauterize me, dispel me, dispel me, dispel me. Thank you. I dispelled myself, never mind. All good. I'm trying to keep this going. So we get blown around a lot. So you can imagine, like, Tormented Souls haven't been too bad here. I mean, I'm probably not doing the best example. I've had some occasions where you just can't see them. There's somewhere in there. You've been moved out. Look at all the crap that's going on here. But I'm trying to keep some sort of position here. I really do need a Tormented Soul to spawn now. So let's get rid of a couple of shards. And keep everything going. There it is. Just spotted it. Come on. I need some defensives here. Give me my proc. Die, 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 die. It's going to die now. Go. Shard spam, shard spam. Oh my god. Dark Flight. Move out of there. Refresh. And we're fine. This is some classic Raider skill right here. A lot of people are going to hate this fight. I love it. I think it's really cool. Let's use a defensive. Dispel myself. Good. If you've got the access to... Oh, everyone's dead. I didn't even notice I'm micromanaging that much. I really did not notice. Everybody died. Which is kind of commonplace on Wrath of Ashara. I mean, I'm fine. I can dispel myself, heal myself for a lot of good defensives. But that's generally how this fight goes. I'll soulstone you now, bruv. It is generally how this fight goes, so don't worry about that. But it gave you an idea of the kind of chaos that goes on, and then you can see, I mean, I missed out on people dying there. That's really not like me. But purely because I'm looking for tormented souls and stuff all the time. It's crucial to how I play the spec. But this is something that's a quality of life thing that'll change. Overall, though, how much was there to do there? That's what you've got to come away with. There was so much to do. It's so fun. And I would need, absolutely, without question, for anybody who's like shouting at the screen and all that stuff, I really would need to play this effectively. I need something like Tell Me When or something like that. And Blizzard dislikes that. So there may be some changes down there, but that is like a big look at the Affliction Warlock. All the fun stuff it's got going on with it. I hope you like it. I hope you like it. I would love Corruption to be more interesting. That's all. Some very minor tweaks. I like that they're changing Reap Soul to kill the soul, so we don't have that Tormented Souls tracking, which is very distracting. All that stuff going on, and that would make it fine. I wish Doomguard would change to something else, Affliction-based, increase the speed of dots ticking, or something along those lines. Anything like that would be absolutely fine. And I would certainly love to see this change so it didn't feel like wasted. At least a fifth of the power of it is wasted. You're guaranteed to get agony procs and stuff while you're actually casting Soul Harvest, and it just means that some of its power is just always lost, and it doesn't line up well with like killing a target to keep the Deadwind Harvest up. So you can do shitloads of unstable afflictions. You're kind of not getting much benefit from that because they're not procced by the Deadwind Harvester. You get the idea. So they just feel like they're underwhelming. Not broken, but just underwhelming in the world that the Affliction Warlock currently praising. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this very long video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.